All right. But the various Hasidic tzedakkim, so when you talk about tzedakkim, you're talking about those who declare themselves to be righteous, right? Tzedek. Mainly the Maggid's disciples spread across Eastern Europe, with each gathering adherents among the people and learned acolytes who could be initiated as leaders, that is to say, as rabbis. And at this point, under Baal Shem Tov, you have this concept that the rabbi's teaching is superior to the Talmud, which is superior to the Torah. The traditions of Babylonian Judaism superseded and exceeded the commands of the Mosaic Torah, and the Talmud was declared superior actually in the age of Hillel the Elder, about 100 BC. All right? All of this was going on. All right. And then what they were doing is they were recruiting rabbis, and people would be subject to the rabbi, not to the rabbi, then to the Talmud, then to the Torah. All right. The righteous courts in which they resided, attended by their followers to receive blessing and counsel, became the institutional centers of Hasidism, serving as its branches and organizational core. Slowly, various rites emerged in them, like the Sabbath tish or table in which the righteous would hand out food scraps from their meals, considered blessed by the touch of those imbued with godly light during their mystical ascensions. These are Kabbalistic ascensions that occur with the incantation of the 72-letter name. Okay, it's Kabbalistic doctrine, does not appear in the Torah anywhere. There's nothing in the Torah that says if you incant the 72-letter name, you will ascend. Okay, it's not there. All right, let's go to slide 6 here. So Hasidic Judaism is much, much older than the modern iteration, however. The Talmud refers to the pietists of old, which were called the Hasidim HaRishonim, or that is the first Hasidim, who would contemplate an entire hour in preparation for prayer. The first to adopt this epithet collectively were apparently the Hasidim in the Second Temple period Judea, known as Hasidians after the Greek, rendering after their name, which served as the model for those mentioned in the Talmud. The title continued to be applied for the exceptionally devout. Okay, so the Hasidians, or called the Hasidim HaRishonim, appeared in the Talmud. They were known during the Second Temple period. This precedes the coming of the Mashiach by some, that you had this Hasidic movement. However, in the 12th century Rhineland, or Ashkenaz as in Jewish parlance, in other words, when people say Ashkenazi Jews, what they mean is they're talking about Jews who were from Deutschland. And Deutschland wasn't just modern Germany, but included Germany, Poland, Moldova to some degree, Western Ukraine to some degree, even Hungary and the Czech Republic, the Czechoslovakia to some degree. Not entirely in those countries because they were distinct by language, and also Austria. But you're talking about the Germanic people. And when you talk about Ashkenaz, I personally believe that the Ashkenaz are marked by blonde hair, blue eyes. Okay? The sons of Gemer, the son of Yafet, he who went north, and through an epigenetic process, the albino aspect of the DNA of Noah was resident in Yafet, and that DNA was given birth because of the coldness of the temperatures and the lack of sunlight and so forth. And so this Germanic tribe of Ashkenaz resided in Deutschland. They wanted to call themselves Aryans. However, when you talk about the Aryan people, you're talking about, there was, to some degree, there were the sons of Reuven that were called Carmi. His son was Carmi, who was taken captive by the Babylonians or by the Assyrians and taken out into Iran to form the city of Carmeni that Josephus referred to as Germany. And this tribe also migrated into Deutschland that the Jews would come to call Ashkenaz. So Ashkenaz is not talking about a tribal affiliation. It's talking about a land, a geographic area. So you're talking about Jews from Deutschland would be called Ashkenazi Jews, okay? And now they also called themselves Hasidics, but they were known as Ashkenazi Hasidism, okay? And in the 16th century, when Kabbalah spread, the title also became associated with it. That is to say, Kabbalah and Hasidism are almost inseparable, okay? So an Orthodox Hasidic Jew is going to practice or have a great understanding of Kabbalah and the Kabbalistic teachings, and to some degree, some of them take advantage of Kabbalistic practices. All right. Now, let's get to the prophecy. Okay, so I wanted to point this out because what you see is this. When you talk about the Casdim, the realm of the Casdim are interesting. It's an interesting group of people because they are not the descendants of Yaakov in the house of Yasharel, but they are relatives of Abraham. I write about this extensively in a blog that's going to be published tomorrow on the Sefer website, sefer.net. You can catch my blog on the Casdim, because what you see is the relatives of Abraham. You know, you have a few relatives that were the sons of Nahor, his brother, and Nahor. It's very interesting. This may be the derivative source of the name Yeshua among the Casdim, coming from Abraham's brother Nahor, a Casdim, a relative of Abraham, not a descendant of Yaakov. Also, Lot, his nephew, Lot, who would give birth to two tribes through his two daughters. You know the story. But the Moabites or the Moabim, and the Ammonites, these two are also Casdim. What's interesting about the Moabites is that the Moabites worshipped Baal and they worshipped Molech, and they passed their children through to Molech. In other words, these were proponents of infant sacrifice called the Moabim. The Moabim, proponents of infant sacrifice, and Solomon, who married a Moabite princess, erected an altar to Molech on the Mount of Olives in the last years of his kingdom, and began the practice of allowing children to pass through to Molech at this altar. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the idea of passing the seed to Molech was present among the Casdim, as was astrology. Now, that doesn't mean that every Casdim was a worshiper of Molech, but many were, and few of the Jews who were taken captive into Babylon come back to the reverence of the temple. There were about 45,000 that came back with Ezra and Nehemiah to help construct the second temple. In other words, it was a very small remnant that returned to the practice of worshiping Yahweh and the Torah. Very small remnant. The large bulk of the house of Judah and Benjamin and Levi that had been taken into Babylonian captivity retained themselves in the Babylonian captivity and merged and melted among the Casdim. And the Casdim are this tribe that eventually came to occupy Babylon and Assyria and Turkey and Armenia and Georgia and the southern steppes of Russia, which would later become Khazaria. Okay, mostly Casdim, relatives of Abraham. Very important point. Relatives of Abraham, many of whom may have had the tainted seed that had been passed through to Molech. Not all, but some. Okay? All right. Now, we have that. That's just from looking at verse 1, 9:1, in discussing the realm of the Casdim.